Today, I want to talk about three common mistakes that I see all the time when it comes to owning real property for couples who are married in the state of Texas. So these days, it's not at all uncommon that one of the partners to the marriage actually owned the real estate prior to the marriage. And so, you get married and you move into the house that's owned by your partner. So the first mistake that is common is that people think that just because they've lived together in that house, that they're both going to have an ownership interest in the house. And the truth is that if that house was purchased before marriage, then that house is actually going to be the separate property of the person who purchased it. And this applies even in the instance if the house was purchased, say, a month before marriage, a week before marriage. If the inception of title happened before the marriage, then that house is actually considered separate property. That means that, if the house is, increased in value over the 20 years you've been married, you're not going to get to share in that value. Now, there are some reimbursement claims. These are equitable claims that you can make to get recoup some of the cost of living in the house, but they're very limited. And so the reimbursement claims, one is for the reduction of principal payment. So if you're paying a mortgage every month, you're paying down on that loan. So let's say when you got married, it was, you owed $100,000 on the house, and now you're getting divorced and you owe $50,000. That could be a $50,000 reimbursement claim. You'd be entitled to about half of that, right? To about $25,000. Now, it's important to note it's not the whole mortgage payment. So if you're escrowing property taxes and insurance, it's not going to include that or the interest. We're just going to look at the reduction of principal. Also, if you own that house and you all are doing capital improvements to it, so let's say you add a second story, you convert your garage, you put in a pool, you may be able to recoup the increase in value. So it's not the cost. It's not what you paid for the improvement. It's going to be the increase in value. Now, that is not. I mean, it's always challenging to prove because you're going to have experts who are going to testify to the value. It becomes really challenging to prove the increase in value when we're talking about capital improvements that were done 10 years ago. So if you are making capital improvements to a home that is actually owned by the other partner, you're going to want to keep really good records and maybe even have an appraisal done before and after the capital improvement was done. I know that that's not normal in the course of a marriage relationship. If you're talking about putting in a pool, that you're also going to be talking about appraisers just in the event that a divorce happens. But I just want you to be aware of that and to know that. Okay, the second mistake people make when they are living in a home that is the separate property of the other party is they will often go to refinance it. If interest rates go down, you want to get a better deal, you want to get some cash out to do something. So it's not uncommon for a married couple to refinance that note. What often happens is that in the refinance process, the partner who doesn't own the house sees their name on something called a deed of trust. And they may think and may have even been led to believe that their name has now been added to the deed. It has not been added to the deed. A deed of trust is a financing document. It's evidence of the mortgage. It's what allows the loan company to come and foreclose on the mortgage. So what happens is you've just added your name to a debt, a liability on a piece of property that you don't own. And so I want people to be really aware that if you are living in a home that's owned by your partner before marriage and you're refinancing the house, think carefully and maybe even get some legal advice before you agree to be obligated on that debt for the property that you don't own. Okay, the third mistake that people often make when it comes to owning or living in a home owned by the other party is not keeping good records. So we talked a little bit before about the reimbursement claim. So you're really going to need like a copy of the mortgage statement in the month that you were married. Just keep that, scan it, put it in a file somewhere. And then if a divorce happens, we're going to be looking at what's owed on the property at the time of the divorce. And the same thing, we already talked a little bit about how complicated the capital improvement claims can be to prove. So any records for a capital improvement during the marriage, you just want to keep a file on that so you have it if you ever need it. And finally, The other area where record keeping is really important is, let's say you own the house, you lived in it for the first couple of years of marriage, and then you sell it and you go and you buy a new house. Well, the good news is that the new house will likely be community property. It's purchased during the marriage. You're probably using some, income that you all have earned during the marriage as the down payment. But if you're reinvesting the sales proceeds from the separate property house, then you just want to have a really good trail. And that isn't necessarily for the person who didn't own the house, but it's just good to know that there could be a separate property claim for that money. So let's say you clear $100,000 on the house that was owned before marriage, and that $100,000 gets reinvested in the new home that you purchased. That's now $300,000. That the partner who put in the $100,000 would be entitled to get that back. So it's just good to know. And I think really clear records helps make all of this super easy. And I also think having this information helps you make empowered decisions during your marriage. Of course, if you have any questions and you want to talk with a lawyer, we would be happy to talk with you, and we'll include a link so you can contact us for a consultation and just visit with us about your situation. And this is not intended to be a substitute for legal advice. So you do want to make sure if you have questions that you are getting proper legal advice during the marriage. I hope you found this helpful. My name is Jennifer Hargrave. I'm with Hargrave Family Law. We're a family law firm located in North Texas. And we believe in helping people make informed decisions during the marriage and during a divorce. Thank you.